What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou with the Duran, and I have with me Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. And today we're going to be talking about the interview with the alleged Novichok assassins. All right, Alexander, I paused a little there because I said alleged Novichok assassins because the UK alleges that these are the two guys that did it. Putin surprised everyone. The Russian President Vladimir Putin surprised everyone a couple of days ago at the Eastern Economic Forum when he came out briefly to say, you know, we found these guys, we know who they are, and pretty soon they'll be talking to the world. They'll be telling their story. And sure enough, they're telling their story. And before I get your thoughts on the interview with RT editor-in-chief Margarita Simonyan, I thought she did a good interview. I mean, I thought she probed them to get answers that a lot of people, answers to questions that a lot of people have from, you know, when they were taped by the CCTV, you know, exiting Gatwick to what the hell they were doing in Salisbury. So I think she really did, you know, try to dig and find some answers to some difficult and interesting questions. What was your take of the interview with these two guys?
Well, I thought actually that they gave a pretty convincing story. Can I just say, a little while ago, just after all this story started, I had a discussion with John Kiriakou, who is a former CIA agent. And he said to me, the way these two people are supposed to have behaved on the basis of what the British the British authorities were saying, just doesn't make sense if it was a real intelligence agency organized assassination. It's much more convincing as two guys going off doing a tour of places like London and Salisbury. And sure enough, what do we hear? These two guys have come forward. The British never expected that. And what do they say? Well, actually, we're two guys who are doing a tour of London. We were going around shopping in London, just what they seem to be doing in the pictures that the British released. And we also decided to do a sightseeing tour of Salisbury. And frankly, I think that's pretty plausible. And I think the sort of silence, the shocked silence in Britain is telling its own story. There is one specific fact which the British said, which these two guys have contradicted, and where I think the evidence is really very much in their favour. The British said that their names were aliases. These two guys are saying it's their real names. Now, already that makes the British story look very shaky.
Yeah, I mean, I did a short video on this briefly, and my video on it was, I prefaced it with, you know, this thing just got really weird because I tend to disagree with you a little bit in that their story, I don't know, I just don't know Salisbury. I don't know if it's really a big tourist destination or if, you know, people all around the world hear about it and want to visit it. And my thinking is, I agree with you. These guys are definitely, to me, I said, there's no way these guys are intelligence agents at all. It just doesn't fit.
I mean, it's just a ridiculous idea.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous idea. You saw them, it's a ridiculous idea. But on the flip side, I said, I think these guys did not go to London or Salisbury for a tourist expedition. I think they went for something else. What that is, I don't know. But I don't think it was to assassinate this guy. What do you think?
Well, can I can I say, Salisbury is actually a very big tourist destination in Britain. It's got one of the most famous cathedrals in Britain, Stonehenge, which is this Stone Age monument, very mysterious. It's very big in New Age people. It's pretty close by. And then there's this very weird Iron Age fort at a place called Old Sarum, which is a pretty odd and bizarre place. So it's not inconceivable that they are tourists. Having said that, maybe they were up to something else. I mean, they've given a rather odd description of what their actual work is. I mean, I don't believe that they're intelligence officers at all. I mean, I don't believe that at all. But on their own account that they were going around various countries and picking up pills to establish some kind of sports industry in Russia, it doesn't seem very convincing either. And I have to say, it's unconvincing in a way that if it was, it's so unconvincing that it makes it even less likely that they're intelligence officers, because intelligence officers surely would come up with a more impressive explanation of themselves. So, I'm not going to speculate too deeply about what they are. But it seems to me that the story that they're intelligence officers and that they were sort of deadly assassins on a mission to kill someone, to my mind, that never looked very convincing. And it's now really obviously falling apart.
Yeah, I think there's no way that these guys, I agree, there's no way they're assassins. That's obvious. And I also agree with their business sounds I've heard stranger enterprises and entrepreneurial activities. So maybe these guys are running around trying to get pills for sports nutrition stuff. But do you think that Putin, days before this interview came about, do you think that Putin, in a way, is kind of trolling Theresa May?
Yeah, he is. He trolls a lot, by the way. He likes to do this. And it drives Western leaders mad. They hate it, but of course that's what he was doing, and he trolled them he trolled Theresa May at the Far Eastern Economic Summit, and God help us, what a way to do it. He had the Chinese president sitting next to him, he had the South Korean president just a little way off, he had the Prime Minister of Japan nearby. All of these people were there at this summit, and here is Putin sounding off, making teasing May, teasing the British, looking anything but isolated, may I add. And he's invited these people to come forward, and of course they have. And the British story looks completely unconvincing. And I'm going to tell you something: if some people in Britain still cling to the British story, nobody in Russia watching this interview is going to do so now. I mean, they just won't believe it there, and I don't think they'll believe it in many other places. So there it is.
How do you think these guys, as we wrap up this segment, how do you think these guys, came about to be in front of Margarita Simonyan and RT? I mean, obviously they don't speak English. I mean, at least that's what it seemed in the interview. I mean, they were speaking in Russian. Maybe they're more comfortable speaking in Russian, obviously. But how did they come about to be in front of RT to give this this interview? Did this? I'm sure the Kremlin, had something to do so that they could get the press out. But how are these things usually coordinated?
Well, I suspect there was a steer. I suspect what happened was they were told, you've got to tell your story to the media. The obvious media to tell it to is RT, because RT is this big international station. I'm pretty sure that Margarita didn't get a call out of the blue from these guys. I'm sure that somebody from the Kremlin called her and said, or RT and said, look out, there'll be these two interesting guys will be coming to call you. And sure enough, they did. And that way there was an interview set up. So, I mean, the Russians are being a little bit mischievous in the story they're saying, and they're not telling the whole truth. But then, given the whoppers, the lies other people are saying, I think we can excuse them that, frankly. I think these are small lies, and I think probably these guys are telling a pretty big truth, and that big truth is that they're not the assassins that the British say they are. They may not be telling the whole story. They may be, as I said, exaggerating or misleading us about the nature of their business, but they're not assassins, exactly. and that's the truth of it. And I don't think anybody looking at them. I mean, it's the other thing. You look at them on this thing. I mean, they just don't look like assassins. They don't look like professional killers. They're just completely unconvincing in that role. I mean, they really would be the Laurel and Hardy assassins. And I don't believe that the Russian intelligence, which is pretty efficient, uses people like that. So I think, as I said, it's the bigger truth. Maybe some people are playing a little on the side, playing games on the side, trolling the British a little, but we got a lot further in the truth now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a big takeaway, that these guys are probably saying a couple of little white lies, small fibs, but the overall big takeaway that I got is that there's no way these guys are assassins. And just to finish up real quick, what were your thoughts on how Margarita Simonyan interviewed these guys? And especially with two questions, I think that were kind of interesting. In the opening, she asked them, and I want to quote her, she said, "You honestly look very tense," to these guys. So, I mean, I think she noticed that these guys were very uneasy for whatever reason. And there could be a lot of reasons which you may like to explain why these guys would be a little afraid, a little nervous. And then she, as she was finishing up a lot of the interview, I think she went into the interesting, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but the thoughts on the internet, everyone talking on the internet about the Gatwick airport exit and how maybe the CCTV was doctored for the timestamps. And I'll quote what one of the guys said, Boshirov. When Margarita asked him this, he said, quote, "We always go together through the same corridor and the same customs service officer or policeman. One goes, the other waits. We went through the corridor together. We always do it together. How did it happen? It's better to ask them, the UK police."
Yeah. Right. First of all, I think Margarita Simonyan handled the interview extremely well. I mean, she's very experienced. She knows what she's doing. And as I said, I'm pretty sure that she was the right person to do it, actually. And she did it very cleverly. Now, the point about the fact that they were stressed, they do look stressed, actually. And they look stressed in a very interesting way. First of all, if they were professional killers, they would not look stressed, or they would not look stressed in that way. These people don't just look stressed, they look scared. That was my overwhelming impression about them. And the way they answered the questions, I think, showed that they were very scared. And coming back now, and that's important because I said, I mean, you would not expect hardened GRU operatives who would have been very carefully drilled and trained before they were left in front of a camera to look scared in that way. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, and I thought she was really clever here, and more clever than people understand. When she asked them those questions about them going through the gates, and they gave this description that they always go through the same corridor. She also asked another question, which of course a lot of people I don't think have picked up on, but it was a very clever one, which is she asked them, you are both all the time together, what is your relationship? And sort of implying that they might be a gay couple. Now, the reason that was interesting to me is because I'm married. And I and my wife always tend to go through the same gates. We follow each other. That is what couples do. Now, the argument that has been created around this thing to try and explain the timestamps is that they went through different gates. They've denied that they went through different gates. And by asking them the question that she did, Simonyan sort of hinted at why they might be going through the same gate. Now, of course, memory. Do I remember which gate I go through when I travel to Gatwick? Not always.
Right.
I mean, are these two people a gay couple? Well, they didn't confirm that they were. They didn't deny that they were. They got cross and embarrassed at that point. So I think she put through those questions, she created doubts around the British version of this story, which is that they simultaneously passed through two different gates. And I think she did it in a very clever way, much cleverer than I think people have understood. And I think as we get more information about this story, I think we're going to find out an awful lot more. Which could undermine even that part of it.
Right, exactly. And it also kind of corroborates, I mean, I don't want to speculate as to their orientation or not. They could be friends, it could be a couple.
Exactly.
But it would kind of tie together, the reason that they are traveling together as tourists and the reason why they may feel uncomfortable about the certain situation, the spotlight that has focused on them. Yeah. Exactly.
I would add, and I don't need to say this, But if they are a couple, and of course we're not saying that they are, but if they are a couple, then the whole theory that they're GRU assassins collapses utterly. I mean, I cannot believe the GRU would hire a gay couple to go around murdering people. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever, but there is a gay couple who are assassins in that one. I mean, this is just too incredible to be true. But as I said, we're not saying that they're a gay couple. We'll just have to wait and see. But clearly, that was in her mind, and as I said, it was interesting what their reaction to the question was.
Yeah, we're merely speculating here because
we're merely speculating.
It was an interesting interview, and I agree, Margarita Simonyan asked very interesting, probing questions. Yeah, and you know what? And everyone that's watching this video, we really love to hear your comments and how you saw the interview by RT and what your thoughts are as to whether you think these guys were lying, whether you think they were saying the truth, if you think they're guilty, if you think they're innocent, if you think something else is going on. I mean, you'll be surprised. Me and Alexander and Peter, we read your comments and we love to hear how you guys dissect the situation. So on that note, Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like the video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. In the description down below, you'll also see a link to our PayPal page. Feel free to donate so we can continue to create broadcasts and shows like this one you just saw right now. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, Take care.